welcome to another episode of Fireside Leadership. I'm your co-host, Liza Magcale, and this is my lovely co-host, Janice Lee. We are celebrating today. What are we celebrating today, Lady J?
Um, Good health.
Good
Good vi-
health.
good health,
Cheers.
good vibes. Cheers.
Cheers. Awesome. Awesome. So today, what are we doing? We're going to introduce our guest.
We are going to introduce our new guest. So I'm really excited for to announce that we're going to actually have David Au-Yeung here with us today. And David's somebody that I met while I was working at Flipp. So just a little bit about David. He's a seasoned entrepreneur. He's been working with over 15 years of experience in the high tech industry. So he actually co-founded Flipp with three of his friends from university, and they grew it from a company with four guys working in a basement to a retail technology company that grew to over 400 people at one point and had 60 million downloads in North America, and pretty impressive. So
Wow.
yeah, during his time at Flipp, he actually had a huge role in spearheading the culture. And so what I really enjoyed about David was that, he's a great leader, but he's also led in different functions. So he started off in technology. His background was very engineering focused. And as the need arose, he actually moved into a people and culture role at Flipp and taking on that other area of the business, which is completely different, and then ultimately moving back into tech. So he's got lots of great experience. He actually also implemented the company's first leadership framework model, which we've asked him a little bit more about to explain, to help drive the company's coaching model. He's really multifaceted. He actually used his expertise to drive a lot of innovation in the retail industry to help, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners know about, help people save time and money through the Flipp application. So right now he's currently a board member at Flipp. He's actively involved in driving the future vision of the company. He's also really passionate about helping and mentoring startups. So he devotes a lot of his time helping, of his own volition, wanting to support startups and people who are into that space to learn more and share his wisdom. He's actually appeared in the Globe and Mail, Benefits Canada, Ottawa Citizen, and Forbes. And I know Lisa's going to talk a little bit about, some of the questions that we had for him as he was scaling up Flipp and what it looked like.
For sure. So I'm so excited to share this interview because I know I have used Flipp before you even
Mm-hmm.
started working there. And I know it has been a game changer to many, 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 many households.
Yeah.
So time and money. And it's amazing how technology and retail sort of like came together, and it's a really, really great app. So if you don't have it already, it's Flipp, Flipp, and you're going to stream right into a question where we asked David, because he did found or was very instrumental in launching this. What did you call it, Janice?
It's a coaching model. So the coaching model that he actually spoke to was called situational leadership by Kenneth Blanchard. And so he talks about basically how they implemented that a model in the business and
Right.
some other questions. Yeah.
So the question that we had asked him was understanding that growing from 4 people, co-founders, to over 400 people, there is going to be a lot of training and upskilling with your
Mm-hmm.
team. And David is now going to talk about how he modeled that in his own leadership style.
At Flipp, we moved quite fast, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't want to then train or drive this across the entire organization up front, right? Like right
Mm-hmm.
away. So then we start to kind of organically use it, but keep people in the loop about what we're trying to do. And then we put together a structure around how we're gonna, teach this to the entire organization. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the teaching is one part, the practicing is another, right?
Right? Like multiple iterations of something working until it's working the way that you want it to work. So end to end, from the time that you guys started planning and then actually started rolling it out and then seeing some results, how long do you think that?
I would say within a year, right? We would do term-based planning, and over a few terms, we would get it rolled out. But in terms of, you know, people practicing it and having it being active in their style, it took at least a year, I would say, right? And obviously, there's still problems with that too, because just teaching something and people don't use it is another issue too, right?
Yeah, adoption oftentimes is, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you create those new habits for people when they're not used to doing something like that?
or if they're just resistant to it because emotionally they're not picking up the same value for adopting a new way of doing things, right? Like everybody needs something different, he was saying, or they behave differently. So I think the hire is important, but then also when the company changes, are they willing to change in the same direction? Right.
Yeah,
So,
that was like a huge difference I saw when the company was very small, and a change happened very quickly because you can really talk to everyone to get buy-in or listen to the concerns. But when you start to grow and you have multi-layer of management, and now you're relying through your chain to really understand what people are feeling, right?
yeah.
So it is naturally slower.
So is it true then? Because I remember Jack Welch wrote a book about being agile, and one of GE's greatest things was that it was agile despite it being so big as GE. That like they kept all the departments really, really tiny so that they could move without being bogged down by the rest of the corporation. Do you think that in tech business specifically that that's also doable, where you could break apart the hierarchy so that they could still remain agile even though you're 400 plus people?
Yeah, for sure. There are well-written models out there for organization structure, such as the famous Spotify model, where you have squads, you have teams, right? And we modeled our structure similar to that structure within engineering and products, and it was successful in some areas, but it was it had its problems as well too, because anytime you're changing organization structure, you have some kind of underlying infrastructure that needs time to change. So for us, it was around, how we developed our systems, right? So our systems, our software was developed based on systems-based ownership, and then now you're switching it to mission-based teams. Then, who owns the systems? So it's there are problems when leaders are trying to switch and change the structure to fit the business, right? And I think that takes time, right? Like one thing I think we could have done better was to be more thoughtful about those changes, because like some of us still in some ways lived in the we are a startup, we need to be as fast as possible, let's do this change, we're ready for the change, we are ready for the change, but it doesn't mean that our team members are ready for the change. It doesn't mean our infrastructure is ready. It doesn't mean our tools are ready, right? So I agree with the statement, but I think implementation wise, that's where it gets difficult, right?
Yeah, that the true work comes in, right? At that point,
Yeah.
where you're met with the objective and then you got to actually make it work. And so, Janice, do you have any questions relating to the other side of the technology as it relates to people and coaching, like getting people to move or to?
Yeah, so one of the things that I was interested in learning about, and you mentioned this earlier, AY, was that, how do you create that environment for people to ask for the support, or, the leadership is open and they want to help people move forward. But in any large organizations and wherever you work, there's also a little bit of hesitation among people because maybe they don't feel like they're comfortable reaching out or asking for support, or like you mentioned, even leaders need to be vulnerable. How do you create that environment? Like, what are some examples that you've seen that have really worked?
Yeah, like I wouldn't say I'm the best at this. I'm always learning how to do that well. From Flipp, I've recently started a new startup, and even at a small scale, a small size, it's something that you need to recreate. So I think it is the leader's responsibility to create that environment where it's authentic, it's truthful, and also people have the freedom to be themselves. And the only way you can do that is you have to demonstrate that first, right? So a leader cannot ask people to be open to admit mistakes if the leader, him or herself, doesn't do the same thing, right? So I think that is probably the hardest part, and it takes time too, right? And you have to be consistent, because someone in a leadership position, if you're put into a leadership position, other people observe your actions and your behavior very closely, and they remember what you say and they remember what you said even from a year ago. So you have to be very careful about how you are, and how you like live up to the principles and the values that you say the company stands for, right? So I would say it is to just be very diligent to practice those, no, to practice what you preach, and to stay very consistent with that. And if you mess up, just admit mistakes, right?
I think so. I think the other thing too is not only are people going to remember what you said to them, but they're definitely going to remember how you made them feel, right? Like people will definitely remember how you made them feel. And so you want to make sure that they feel like they can come and talk to you, especially if they're going to be contributing to your team.
Yeah.
This is a total offside question, but given that congratulations on your new startup, how are you keeping up morale during these times, like with your teams?
Yeah, so we started during COVID. Actually, a few months ago we started, and everyone's working from home. We've actually only seen each other once, once in person, right? And that was out of necessity because we've been very diligent with the rules. We try to nowadays I think some of the digital tools are quite powerful. We're doing it right now, and we use everything that we learned as well back during the Flipp days in terms of how to work remotely with remote teams, proper documentation, proper decision documentation as well too. People tend to forget what we decide on, and lastly, we just started creating virtual social times. Right.
Yeah.
It's really hard to create this awesome team where people are authentic and you trust each other when you don't know each other, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all about creating the personal relationships.
Yeah.
Like back at Flipp, I started the company with 4 other of my friends, and we went to school together. We knew each other for at least 7 years, right, before you start the company. So we already had that baseline, right? So
yeah,
companies and leaders have to create those opportunities.
Yeah. We did in one of our businesses, we delivered like dinner to everybody at the same time, and then had a Zoom link, and everybody ate kind of together, and then the kids broke out, and then the adults, like that was as good as it was gonna get. That so
I know.
Get creative and building that, and so we normally would do 2 in-person events. So around between Canada Day and Independence Day, like that July 1st through 4, and then one around Christmas. So, I mean, we're gonna try and keep that going. But you're right; it definitely does come top down, core values, and then what are you doing to support those values, and then inviting the teams to participate in it. So
yeah, so going back to like the Flipp experience, that was pre-COVID. When we first started the company, we had a tradition where on Friday we would meet up for lunch, because I mean, when we first started the company, we had no money, so we can only work in our basements, right? And so we would meet up once a week for lunch, and then the traditional continued where each of the founders, we would take turns buying lunch for the whole company. Until it became unsustainable and I couldn't buy lunch for 30 people
and
deliver it. So we started to outsource that, right?
Yeah.
I think that continued on. You remember, Janice, Friday lunches?
I do remember. Friday lunches is epic. We'd look very much forward to like what the theme of the cuisine was that for a week.
Oh, that's awesome. How fun.
Yeah, different themes every
tacos.
We'd have Korean, Thai, Italian, everything. Yeah. There are some fan favorites for sure.
Yeah. Back when we were smaller, I used to bring in Japanese food too, like special ordered, because we didn't have that many people. It was easy. It was easier to say, sushi.
Yeah. Hey, Toronto's a great spot to be able to do multicultural dining, right? Like, it's really beautiful to be able to do that.
Yeah, but now during COVID, we just, like you say, intentionally book time.
Yeah.
to talk about something other than work.
Other than
Exactly.
work, and like at a different time also, right? Not during the day. So, and it was nice to include the families also, right? It was something
Hmm.
very different. And because it was a family event, we had to really frame it for the children to say, like, this is not a normal thing, right? We're not always going to have a tablet eating with people at the table, okay? But today we're going to do that. And I think it's again modeling to the little people what it is that's acceptable and how you're going to frame things. And so do you want to tell us a little bit about your startup and what you're doing now, or is it still preliminary and undercover?
Well, it's early. It's
Okay.
early. So it's in the consumer facing, space,
Okay.
in the automotive space.
Okay.
We're essentially trying to help people, consumers buy and sell cars much easier than the current process.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
It's still early, so
Okay.
we're looking to test it within the private beta during this quarter. We're in the middle of
Mm-hmm.
doing that, and into next quarter, and launching it sometime in Q2.
Very exciting. So, question on that, like now you have the experiencing. So, Flipp was like in 2003 started, and now like it's many years later, you're starting another startup. And how does it compare in terms of like what leadership lessons hindsight are you taking into your new operation and the new way that you're working with your teams?
The interesting thing is I'm learning many things new. Um, when we first started Flipp, we were in our 20s and we didn't really know what we were doing. And I think part of being a little naive and hungry and passionate, we made many mistakes, but at the same time, we executed at an incredible like pace and speed.
Mm-hmm.
I think now, after 20, everyone on the team, everyone on average, we have like 20 years experience on average. So we're more careful, I would say, in terms of how which areas do we tackle first versus the second. Back at Flipp would be let's do everything, right? As much as we were passionate about doing. So I think being a little more thoughtful about what we do first would be one. But I'm thinking, it's still pretty hard. It does not get easier, and I think that's part of the reinvention process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's the same, even if you're doing it again, right? Context is different. You're working with different people in different space, and I think it's the learning and the challenge that excites me.
Yeah.
Awesome. I like how you're saying that, even with all your experience in going from a startup to a 400-person shop, which you can't really call a shop anymore, you're still learning new things. There's still opportunities for you to reinvent and create new things and like see things from a different perspective. So I think that's awesome to hear, because it's never stops, right? You're never going to stop learning something new. And I think that's part of the reason why Liza and I love talking to people who
Yeah.
have varied experiences, because we're taking away something new all the time. So thank you for sharing all those
Yeah, and I think
experiences with us.
to end up there too is the more years you work, the more you realize you don't really know everything, right? And then so now I'm finding myself asking for help, right? Within my network, right? And it's great to have those type of people mentor me. Some of them are people I used to help back in the day, right? And they're helping me now, so it's great.
Let's talk a little bit about that, because there has been this running theme for the last little bit about asking for help, and how do a lot of people are adverse to asking for help. They resist asking for help. They're uncomfortable asking for help. And um, the thought is that if you don't ask, you'll never receive. So if you really need the help and you don't ask, you're never going to get it, and you're not going to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. So have you ever had a hang up about asking for help, David? Or
Yeah. I think asking for help, it's not a one person game, right? It's like it is it's between two people at a minimum. One person needs help, another person either the manager or the leader is helping, or someone in their network.
Mhm.
So it comes down to humility as well too, and kind of being self-aware, and it does take time to be able to admit you don't know what you're doing, right? But I think that's something people need to practice more of. And as a leader, it's actually the leader's responsibility to help their people feel comfortable to ask for help, because that's the responsibility on that side, right? Versus relying on your staff to take on that responsibility to find their own help.
Yeah. Has the way that you ask for help now changed, and the way that you model to others how to ask changed? I think it's maybe the same question, but
Yeah, I think I'm just more open about it now, and less self-conscious about it,
right.
right? Being more comfortable with myself in terms of what I don't know, and being okay to be open with the rest of my team about, hey, I'm kind of concerned about this area because I don't think I'm the right person to do it. And that, as easy as it is to say this is the way people should be, it took a long time to get there, right? And I know at Flipp we always talked about humility, right, as part of our key culture.
Yeah, 3 H's.
Yeah, 3 H's. Like, it's hard to just say that's what we do. You have to practice what we do, right?
Yeah.
And I think reflecting on it, it took a long time to get to this point, and still a long ways to go.
Right.
I think that's a really good lesson that you've shared, David, because I think innately we all know this, as like nobody can know everything. Even as a leader, you're not expected to be the expert in everything and know everything. Yet there is some inner hang up for all of us to think if we are being seen as a leader that we should have the answers, and if we don't, there's some sort of deficiency. But it's not. It's actually truly like, it takes a strong leader to actually admit, like, I don't have that answer, but I will go find it, right? Or that I will work with you to figure it out.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a really great message.
And when you're hiring people, you want to hire people who are better at things than you, right? So it's like, you're better at that. Yeah, for sure. Come on board. You were going to say something, David.
Yeah, part of working is not just, sure, making money, providing for the family, that's primary. But part of working is also choosing who you work with and enjoying who you work with. So I really enjoyed, my fellow team members at Flipp, and likewise at my new company. Really enjoy everybody there too, and all of them demonstrate this ability to share what they don't know. Right? Everyone's a leader. Everyone shares what they don't know, what they're concerned with, and it just creates the environment and the atmosphere for people to do that more openly. So I think it's like a team effort too.
Yeah, it's a team effort to create the space to be able to reciprocate the same energy and asks. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for all of your insights. I'm so thrilled that we had time to do this today. Do you have any other questions, Janice? I think
I'm good. I think we've covered a lot of ground here. But I wanted to really, again, thank David for joining us today. I hope, if you enjoyed this, we'd love to have you come back and talk about maybe when your startup is a little more established and on the road. We'd love to have you come back and maybe share a little bit more about your journey on that.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Again, welcoming David, former co-founder and former Flipp co-founder, but also board of directors, and embarking on his next journey. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, David.
Thank you.
All right, see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.